Jenny Tillotson is Senior Research Fellow at Central St. Martin's. Mark Wexler, Film Director. Hal Hefner, Artist, Illustrator, and Writer of Science Fiction and Fantasy. Josh Call, Graduate Student at Penn State, studying Rhetoric of Science and Technology, and Kurt Tigas. And Greg Maga, who's a concept car designer and engineer. So again, we have a really great lineup of people today, and without further ado, I'll introduce Jenny Tillotson to you.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. I'm going to talk to you about my research, Sentient Beings. I trained in fashion communication, so I'm not a scientist, but I do work with numerous scientists. I'm also working at the Institute of Biotech in Cambridge, commercialising my research with Professor Chris Lowe. So I wanted to start off with this quote from Thierry Mugler. Fashion will change dramatically in the years to come. It will be more human, closer to the needs of the people in terms of their well-being, not well-showing. Now this is what Mugler said in 1980, and he's a very, very well-known designer who very avant-garde and has done very sort of exciting projects. But he was very much, this is influenced much of my work, because I'm working towards well-being in fashion. So I'm developing at Central St. Martin's emotional mood-enhancing clothing. I know we talked a little bit yesterday about mood-enhancing. And that's very much my focus. It's based on the sense of smell, and embedding this into clothing to create mood-enhancing clothing. So I'm trying to redesign the future through smell, but very much taking good care of sensitivity and sustainability, especially the fragrance industry. It's up in arms at the moment, loads of new rules that are going on. But with sensitivity to do with smell, we know that it's quite controversial, it's very, very personal, it's very intrusive. And there are certain places in Europe and the States where it's actually banned, including the States. So I wanted to show you a bit about my background and what led me to this. I trained in fashion communication, but I also worked for the Terence Higgins Trust about nearly 20 years ago. I worked as a buddy for the HIV and AIDS, so I was offering emotional support to people with HIV and AIDS. And I very much, the smell of death had such an impact on me. I wanted to find a kind of emotional support system that you wore that was able to get rid of the sense of smell. And also, I've got various people in my family that have bipolar affective disorder, which have extreme emotions, as I'm sure as you know. I've worked in wearable technology. I worked for a company called Charm Technology about 10 years ago. And science fiction, we talked about yesterday, science fiction, and there's various key stories. Ubik is one of them, creating this reality in a can, this big bubble, and that's what I'm trying to do with my clothing, creating this sort of aura. You hear, you see this girl with this aura. But also with Star Trek. So if I quickly show you this video of Q, this is in the encounter at Farpoint, when he actually dispenses some clothes from some smell from his clothes, and it sort of enhances his mood. A third science fiction that's inspired me is J.G.Ballard. He said that fashion is the recognition that nature has supplied us with one skin too few, that a fully sentient being should wear its nervous system externally. So this is really what I'm trying to do at Central St. Martin's and University of Cambridge, is creating this living textile, embedding technology into clothing that dispenses fragrance in response to a sensor. So I'm creating this sort of wearable electronic nervous system with tubes and technology to create this sort of sensitive skin that enhances the emotional state. So, sense of smell, we all know that it's very, very evocative. It has access to feelings, dislikes, and likes. And you probably remember the first smell of your boyfriend or girlfriend or your grandmother's floral perfume. But it also has experience of emotion, either positive effect or negative effect. So as a child, you might remember the smell of rotten tomatoes or whatever it might be, and that just will stay with you. But mood-enhancing effects can have a sort of impact on performance and learning, behaviour. And it's sort of a hotline to the brain. Now, sense of smell is quite a difficult one because there's only had research for the last 22 years, aromachology. Before that, there was very, very little research. But in the last 22 years, there's something called, they're looking at aromachology, which is the science of fragrance. So there are various fragrances that can have an impact on reducing confusion, insomnia. We know that lavender is very good for that. Heart rate, fear, can stimulate the adrenal cortex and balance the nervous system. So what I'm doing with my my research, I call it Sentient Beings, it's the convergence of three areas. It's the technology, emerging technologies such as MEMS, bio-nanomaterials, biometric sensors, fusing this with aromachology, the science of fragrance, to create this sort of smart second skin, this emotional fashion that delivers fragrance in correlation to colour. And it's a complementary system. It's not something that, for example, these clothing you would wear instead of taking lithium or medication or whatever it might be. It's something that complements it and creates a scent bubble. A lot of my work at the moment is influenced by Green Lantern, the superheroes, which is a film that's coming out fairly soon, I believe. And in there's something called the emotional spectrum. It's the idea of having this sort of emotional spectrum. I call it the sort of the mood spectrum, going from a low mood or high mood. But how this corresponds with scent that corresponds to colour in relation to interrelation to mood. So what I'm doing is the same with colour and scent, and you can see here these animations with the bubbles. It looks like bubble gum, but it's actually creating this scent bubble of the different scents. Maybe it's lavender to help you relax, or neroli to help you to stimulate you, to get out of sort of antidepressant. So it's creating this into the clothing, how I could weave this into fabrics, how it could be printed into fabrics, but releasing these scents in response to a sensor. So to show how it works, it's a stimulus, for example, a sensor, a galvanic skin response sensor that would measure emotional response and then deliver a wardrobe of fragrances, really aromatherapy fragrances, not designer fragrances, and how this can convey an aromatic message. So here on the right is the girl, she's jittering, she's nervous, and then it picks up on her mood, and then it releases this sort of calming aura to create this sort of scent bubble, but in a non-invasive, controlled way. And that project was actually shown on the World Transhumanist Association back in 2006, and there was an art gallery. I think it's still on the website, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it's still there. And this worked as a biometric sensor that was actually in the spider. It was a spider and a beetle, and they talked to one another. You would breathe into the spider, it would send a message over to the beetle and then squirt it out from its backside. But it was a project that actually started off as a kind of weapon. It was the idea of releasing a scent as a kind of weapon. So just to finish off, I'll talk about the various different applications, how this could be used to empower through smell. You could use scent to train the nose and brain. You could alert to danger, perhaps there's a gas or a leak or some kind of fire. To help you, to remind you to eat, but it's also particularly good for the audio, visuals, for the sensory impaired. I mean, that's I think where it could move to. One of my projects I'm developing at the Institute of Biotechnology is the scent clock. So this is prolonging emotional well-being. I'm also doing a fellowship with a major consumer electronics company, which links in with the colour and the scent spectrum. But it's this idea of having a scent clock throughout 24 hours that will be able to monitor your mood, or could help you wake up in the morning, send you to sleep at night, stimulate you in the office, whatever it might be. But it's tailored to the individual, so it responds to your particular emotions. But it's this seven colours of the rainbow. In the future, I'm looking to embed electronic nose into clothing. Not really working on this at the moment, but this is certainly an area I'm hoping to work with Monel Chemical Sensor to go and do a sabbatical there. But the idea here is that you would embed electronic nose sensors into clothing and they could sniff out diseases. For example, it's known that the electronic nose can, it works like the dog can detect, dogs can detect cancer in people with cancer. So it's this idea of having electronic nose that could also sniff out stress-related body odour and then shield from a negative feeling. So you can see the idea of having this sort of the electronic nose sensor. Of course, we talked about memory yesterday, and we can lose our memory. But one thing is that the sense of smell can really have an impact on memory. So you could have a system whereby you could actually have certain kinds of scents that would trigger memories in clothing to maintain sensitive olfactory accuracy. We do know that by the age of 65, 70, we tend to lose our sense of smell. So if we're going to be living longer, then we need to kind of learn how to maintain our sense of smell, which is possible. There are ways of doing that. So this is very much something that I'm looking into, but also working with Alzheimer's, experts in Alzheimer's. I'm working with a lady that was at Microsoft that developed the SenseCam, you might be aware of, and she's working on my fellowship with me at Central St Martin's, but trying to link that in with scent and how that might work. And then in the future, how that you could possibly link that in with collecting smells. I mean, that's not possible at the moment, but if you can see this dress here, she's actually collecting smells, it's embedded into the clothing. And then this releases some kind of trigger on demand, and it could, to trigger your memory. So perhaps you collect a smell from school or whatever it might be. But this is a future project, so it's a kind of smell logging. I'm just going to briefly end on pheromones. We all know that sexual body odours are very, very powerful. The connection there between smell and emotion has the power to affect behaviour. We know that for many, not just sex, but also males. Sweat can really, really relax women. If you put a bunch of females together, they can synchronise their menstruation. I mean, there's so much going on there, and I really believe there's a lot of future research in body odour in the future. But pheromones is another area. So thank you very much. There's my contact details, and you're welcome to come and see me at the University of Cambridge. Thank you.